Okay, brothers and sisters, if I got a treat for you, Lance Wilkins is a high councilman, and several weeks ago he gave a really cool talk, and it involves the Persian Empire and the Athenians and Greeks and shields and things like that. Oh, and hoplites. But anyway, I'm not going to explain it. I'll let him do the talk. The sound might be a little bit off because it's a recording of a recording, and that's just the way it goes. That's how it had to go down. But enjoy it, okay? Lance is on the High Council, Brother Wilkins. He's spent the last 10 years mostly in the prison ministry or the branch presidency of also the young single adult branch in Visalia. He moved to Hanford, the Hanford stake in 1995, had a slew of other callings, but the young single adult branch and the prison ministry have been the big ones for him. Brothers and sisters, without further ado, let me introduce to you and enjoy his talk. And pardon the sound quality, Brother Lance Wilkins.
2,500 years ago, the world was dominated by the Persian Empire. Historians estimate that about 40% of the population of the world fell under Persian rule. In the Persians' effort to ever increase the size of their empire, they turned their eyes to the west, to the hundreds of little city-states that we now call Greece. So they gathered up over 200,000 men, thousands of ships. They sailed across the Aegean, and they landed on the coast of Attica, which is the territory around the city of Athens. Now, the Athenians were a free and a proud people, and so they pulled their armor and their weapons off the walls, and they marched out to meet them. Greek infantry were called hoplites, so about 10,000 Athenian hoplites marched towards Marathon, and they chose a battleground. It was in a narrow valley where the Persians could not bring their entire army to bear. They could only bring about 100,000 men. So a battle ensues, 10,000 Greek hoplites against 100,000 Persians. They're outnumbered 10 to 1. The historian of the time, Herodotus, tells us that about a little over 200 Greeks fell in battle. By contrast, about 10,000 Persians fell in that battle. And the Persians that didn't fall fled the field, throwing down their weapons and their armor, fleeing to get away and save their lives from these Greek soldiers. So my question is, how is that possible? How can a small little army, outnumbered 10 to 1, send this much larger force fleeing for its life? Now, the Persians fought in what to them was a conventional way. There was a conventional way for all of the Eastern civilizations for thousands of years. In that they carried a small little target shield. I'm not sure exactly, it could be maybe 18 inches across, something like that, sometimes made of wood, usually wicker. Once they met the enemy, the forces would divide more or less, and it would be warrior against warrior. And once you dispatched one member of the opposing army, then you went on to the next and had a personal contest with the next warrior. Now, the Greeks fought very differently. One of the really obvious differences in the Greek hoplite soldier was what we call the hoplite shield. So they carried this big shield that was like a good 3 feet across, and it was made out of bronze. So if you think about that, it doesn't really matter how buff you are, it doesn't matter how much time you spend in the gym, no one is going to grab one of those hoplite shields and wave it around in battle for hours at a time. It's too heavy, it can't be done. It would fit actually two places. So there was a part that you put your arm through, and there's a little hook kind of that fit right here near the elbow, and then another place, right here where you would grab with your hand. So it connected to your forearm there in two places and would be carried in front of you. And the weight is pretty much centered on the upper arm and the shoulder so that you could carry that weight for a period of time. Now, if the center of the shield is here, my front is covered, of course, but my right side is open. And it was partly for this reason that the Greeks fought in a formation called a phalanx. And of course, here's the imagery that I'm driving towards with this story. When I stand with my hoplite shield in the organization, my front is covered. No sword, no spear is coming through the front of that shield that's protecting me. But I am vulnerable and weak on my right side. So in that formation, the brother or sister to my right, their shield extends and protects me where I'm vulnerable. Likewise, as I cover my front, my shield extends and the brother or sister to my left, where they are weak and they are vulnerable, I offer protection to them. The Greeks also gave commendations for valor in battle, for great deeds done, and much like we give medals in the military today. Now, there was another battle some years later after Marathon. It was called Plataea, and the Greeks again met the Persians, much the same result as the earlier battle. The historical record notes two men that fought on the Greek side in that battle that were singled out in the record for their great bravery. Now, as battle ensued, the armies would crash together, push against each other, stabbing. They would break apart for moments and then crash together again. Well, there was a Greek soldier that in those moments when the killing, I guess, was paused, would leap out of formation and he would take his spear and he would stab at his enemies, then leap back into formation just before the armies crashed together again. Very brave man. I'm sure he added much to the battle and to the Greek victory, but he did not receive a commendation for his contribution. Now, there was another man, same battle, virtually the same place. In those quiet lulls, those quiet moments, instead of leaping out of the formation, he would encourage those around him. He would make sure that everyone was in place, that any openings or gaps were filled in, that everyone had what they needed, that everyone was prepared, so that the next moment the armies came together, they would be in a position to have the most likely chance of success and of saving their own lives. That man received a commendation. The minions of the adversary do battle in this world every day. They seek to destroy the souls of men. We are strongest when we work from within our organization, that is the church. While salvation is an individual endeavor, we are strongest when we are working together from within the organization that the Lord has set for us. And we see, especially in the last couple of years, where many changes have come about as the Lord has prepared us to receive whatever the adversary might have in store for us. Programs like ministering, the new youth programs, the increased responsibilities for Elders Quorum and Relief Society, trying to free the time of the bishop to work with our young people. These are programs that the Lord has brought about, changes to our formation, if you will, in order to have us prepared for what the adversary can bring to us. The Savior set the perfect example. In his mortal ministry, he gave sight to the blind, he healed lepers, he raised the dead. Now, our acts are much like his. They are a type of what the Savior did in his ministry. What do? Well, we give rides to church. We visit the sick or those who are in prison. We offer encouragement. These are the same acts that the Savior does. The difference is that we are at the beginning of this line of progression, and he has already completed. If he were at the same level we were, these are the acts that he would be doing. When we do even these small things, do even these small acts of service, we are like him. There's a short story from the book Saints, Volume 2. I'd like to share this with you. Most of this is a quote. Aaron sat down to rest beside the trail while the others in the company pressed on to the North Platte River. By noon, he still felt too weak to move. The temperature dropped drastically and snow began to fall. 2 men from the company found Aaron. They put him in a wagon with other sick saints and carried him to the North Platte. He found his family, wife Elizabeth and daughter Mary, at the edge of the river, preparing to pull their handcart across. The wagon that he was in, since the oxen were too weak to pull it through the river across the current, Aaron climbed out to cross on foot. He managed to get a few steps into the icy water and then collapsed onto a sandbar. A man on horseback picked him up and carried him to the other side. A north wind blew through the company and hail began to fall. As other emigrants struggled across, women and men stepped back into the icy currents of the river to help them. Aaron was carried to the evening's campsite, feet dangling over the edge of a cart. Elizabeth and Mary followed. Behind them, saints staggered into the fading afternoon, their tattered clothes freezing stiff against their bodies. That night, Elizabeth helped her husband to bed and fell asleep beside him. When she awoke a few hours later, she listened for Aaron's breathing and heard nothing. Alarmed, she placed her hand on him and found his body cold and stiff. When Brigham Young heard of the plight of the handcart company at General Conference, he told the saints this. He said, "Your faith, religion, profession of religion will never save one soul of you in the celestial kingdom of our God unless you carry out just such principles as I am now teaching you. Go and bring in those people now on the plains and attend strictly to those things we call temporal. Otherwise, your faith will be in vain. Some you will find with their feet frozen to their ankles. Some are frozen to their knees, and some have their hands frosted. We want you to receive them as your own children and to have the same feeling for them." In our day, we might say that some have a testimony that is too weak to withstand the temptations of our day. Some might have families too weak to give them guidance. Some will be confused by the sophistry and the untruths taught through the influence of the evil one by otherwise respected secular leaders. The instruction of the Savior through his prophet Brigham Young in his day would be the same to us in our day. During his mortal ministry, the Lord was asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" And the Lord replied, "To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, might, and strength. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." He was then asked, "Well, who is my neighbor?" And in answer, the Lord gave the parable of the Good Samaritan. A man walked the road to Jericho. He was beset by thieves. Everything he had was robbed from him. He was beaten to the point that he was left for dead on the side of the road and abandoned. Later, a priest came walking that same road and saw the man lying on the side of the road, but was afraid that the thieves might still be in the area, and fearing for his own safety, he passed by on the other side of the road and left the suffering man. Likewise, a Levite came by, and again, fearing for his own safety, he left the suffering man on the side of the road, and he passed by and hurried on his way. And then came the Samaritan. What's the significance of the Samaritan? Well, at this time in history, there was great enmity between the Jews and the Samaritans. Geographically, Galilee was in the north, and Judah was in the south, and in between the two was the province of Samaria. Church leaders of the time, Pharisees, scribes, even the common people, as they, on their business, had to travel between Judah and Galilee, and normally that route would take them through Samaria, but because of their dislike for the detested Samaritans, they would travel long distances, taking great circuitous routes around Samaria to reach their destination, adding many miles and much time to their trip. And so the Lord chose a Samaritan to be the one that stopped for the man on the side of the road, to care for the beaten Jews, dress his wounds, carry him to the inn, pay for his stay, promise the innkeeper that if more funds were necessary, he, the Samaritan, would pay. When I was serving a number of years ago in the young single adult branch, there was a young sister there that I had occasion to visit. She had a boyfriend slash fiance at the time, and he had just left for a mission. And she was anxious to receive that first letter, initial word on how he was doing and how things were faring for him on his mission. Several days passed, and no communication came. In fact, 2 weeks went by, and there was nothing. There was a weekend coming up, and I thought, surely this young lady will get something over the weekend. Each day for the last 2 weeks, she had sent me a text message on my phone, no letter today, and I would try to text back something encouraging. I was really counting on that weekend, something to come for her. Monday morning, I received the same text, no letter today. I started to, again, as I had been doing, text an encouraging message back, and something told me this might be worth a phone call. So I called. The poor girl was in tears, fearing that she had already been forgotten after only 2 weeks. And her young elder was just too busy for her and had no time to communicate with her. Well, by chance, I won't go into the details here, but this young woman lived a little over 2 hours south of where I did in the area of the branch. And some might call it coincidence, but it just turned out by chance that morning I had to travel on business to Pasadena. That would take me less than a mile from her front door. So I told her I would stop, which I did, met her mom, talked to her for a little bit, which was very easy. All I had to do was ask a question or two, and she was happy to talk about her and her young man. As I left, I had a spiritual witness, one of significance, that I had done the right thing by stopping and showing some caring and consideration there. Now, I shared this experience with another priesthood holder maybe 2 weeks or so later, and he suggested to me that it really had been a waste of time, that it was such a trivial thing, boyfriend, girlfriend. I mean, it's not important. And all such relationships, it was probably better if they ended when a mission began anyway. I have a different idea. I feel certain, completely certain, that every obstacle I face, that every struggle I have, that every time I meet something that I think is just too hard, it must seem almost trivial to my Father in heaven, and it must seem very easy to him. But he has never treated me that way. When I run into those obstacles and those things that are hard for me and are serious problems for me, they are serious to him only because they are serious to me. In the book of Mark, in the New Testament, we read a story as the Savior neared the end of his mortal ministry. And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment, spikenard, very precious. And she brake the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, "Why was this waste of ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence and have been given to the poor." And they murmured against her. And Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. She hath done what she could. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her." And from Matthew, "Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom I have prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me." Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, "Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? Or when saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee?" And the king shall answer them and say, "Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of these, the least of my brethren, ye have done it unto me." Brothers and sisters, may we, and especially I, do more to give service from within the organization of the church, like the Athenians, as though service were the very essence of my religion, like the pioneers, to those who esteem me as unworthy, like the Samaritan. to any in need, even if their needs seem small or trivial to me, like the sister in the young single adult branch. Doing what I can, as the woman who anointed the Savior's head. And may I serve the least of my brethren, as though I were serving the Master himself.